Welcome back. The Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency says it'll use artificial intelligence and structured professional judgment tools for insider threat detection. DCSA says the tools will give the agency information about insider threats earlier. David Cattler's the outgoing director of DCSA. At Clearance Jobs Connect 2025, he tells Fed Gov Today's George Jackson what insider threats exist today.
So there's a lot of old challenges and there are some new challenges in that. I think one thing is that we all have to appreciate that there's no silver bullet. There's no magical solution to really understand who is going to go bad and who has bad intent and who's going to translate that intent into action. There are some indicators, there are some typical models that we tend to see. And remember that insider threats aren't all potential violent actors. They could be people that speak inappropriately to the media. They could be people that are going to engage in espionage. They could be people that intend to engage in sabotage or other acts that violate trust and can cause some real damage in the system. So the insider threat community has quite a challenge on its hands, because it's not just that you're talking about millions of people that they have to provide surveillance over in that monitoring. It's also that they have to deal with this range of behaviors, and it has to be done fairly and appropriately. We also don't want to be so intrusive that we're violating people's rights, that we're acquiring the wrong information, that we're taking actions against the wrong people. But we want to try to identify people that have the intent and plan to translate that intent into action as early as possible, so that if, they are going to engage in a violent act, we avoid that altogether, and that we can give that person that we've already established trust with, we care about, right? We want to make sure that they also have an opportunity for us to help them and have that, whatever it is, whatever that bad behavior is, be avoided altogether.
One of my favorite parts of your bio, at least in the list of many responsibilities that you hold in this position, is the phrase strategic transformation. It must be incredibly challenging, especially at this time where artificial intelligence, emerging technologies are just exploding. Talk about their role, possibly their future role in the agency's work.
Yeah, so look, one thing I'd say is that it is actually a great joy of being a senior executive in government service, is that you have the thing that you work on where you're supposed to have deep expertise and this great network and set of relationships. And you also have some constancies as a senior executive. And one of them for me, in fact, is this idea that you can lead and be called in to work on transformative efforts. And that's been, frankly, it's one of the things I've enjoyed the most over the course of my career. I'd encourage people to consider that technology is always adapting. The way we do work is correspondingly changing. So I'm not overly in love with or overly invested in any bit of technology. What I try to focus on and have encouraged my agency to consider is the why of what we do. If you understand why security is important, the security equals trust. You're in the trust business. If AI helps you get there, then that's great. If it doesn't, you don't use it. There's some other technology that comes in, great. Consider it, adopt it if it makes good sense. But I think the thing for AI, as I just said in my speech, it's really important for us to remember, is that the decisions that an agency like DCSA can take will deeply affect individual Americans and businesses in ways that are really, really profound. If DCSA determines that the government should not move into a trust relationship with you on an individual basis, for example, you don't get that security clearance. Can you work? Can you support your family or not? So it's incredibly important that we get it right. The same for a company when we look at a company's trustworthiness to have a facility clearance or to have employees that could have security clearances on an individual basis. We have to get that right. And I think that the way we look at it, it's important for our fellow American citizens to appreciate that we put great weight on being responsible stewards to protect their data, to use it only for the appropriate purposes, and to make the wisest decisions possible to determine whether that trust basis should be established. So when we apply AI, for example, it's to deal with large volumes of information, to try to make that more manageable, issue alerts, find anomalies, determine areas to focus. But we've made a really strong argument that we should not allow the computer, we should not allow AI to be able to take that fundamentally human decision about the trust question.
I'm going to ask a long-winded question here, Director, but it's just because I want to give our audience a little bit of context. As we tape this, you're on the cusp of a big strategic transformation of your own, retirement from federal service after a long, distinguished career. The public sector media marketplace has credited you with speeding up the background check process, with really establishing much closer ties with the DIB, the Defense Industrial Base. Have you had time to think about your legacy? I mean, you just put out this strategic plan in March. It's a 5-year vision. Like, what's your legacy and what would you like your successor, the 12,000 plus workforce that report into you currently, what are the sort of lessons learned and legacy that you want to impart them with now?
Well, thanks. But look, I think it's important to say right up front that directors work in different ways than the workforce does. All of those things that you cited are actually things that are team wins, I think, for my agency. With nearly 15,500 staff, they do the work. They are the ones that are on the front line interacting with people for background checks and other things. They're doing those industrial security audits, working in the CI community, et cetera, et cetera. What I've tried to do is to help set the conditions for them, to make sure that they have what they need to protect them, the agency, the mission, so that they have the space necessary to do that really important work, to set them free to do it in ways that we agree are better than the old ways. If that's the case, I mean, we've looked across a lot of things to be able to make those decisions. It's made us better. It's made us faster. It's made us better stewards of the taxpayer's dollar. Be sure that they're getting that value. So what I'd say in terms of where do I feel like I've made my mark? Well, one thing is to create those conditions. Second is to set that workforce free, to make sure that they know if you have a better way of doing business, feel free to say so. Management's, we're going to welcome that. I'm going to take a hard look at it. If it comes to me, we're going to give you what you need to move out. We're going to try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, we'll adjust from there, because that's the way we get better. My interaction with industry, though, is fundamentally to make the case clear to them that we're on the same team. So 364 days of the year, yeah, we're here to be sure that you comply. We have this great regulatory and statutory authority to be sure that you follow these rules. But the reality of it is that we're working with you because we know we have a common why. We all care about the national security of the United States, about preserving and extending the nation's competitive edge, whether it's economic or military. I mean, as I say, as a DOD person. But there's one day a year maybe where we're going to come out and we're going to turn our hat around and we're going to call balls and strikes to then measure that compliance and check that progress. But all of the other days of the year, you can call us anytime. We're happy to give you advice and training, hear your complaints, hear your feedback about where things are working well, and to work iteratively with each other to do the things, again, to that common why that are so important to the nation and the nation's security.
The outgoing director of DCSA, David Cattler. You can read more about the insider threat landscape on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com.